think we'll start as much as possible on time. If I could have your attention for a moment, basically a standard operating procedure announcement, which is that if you have mobile phones, kindly put them on silent, or whatever you need to do, switch them off. And that's the only actually one. My name is Sanjoy Hazarika. I'm delighted to be back in, I was going to say Guwahati, but Delhi after several weeks. And it's nice to be here at this time when we're actually having reasonably good weather. And the ISE is in full glow, in bloom. The weather is good and the gardens are green. So I would like to thank the ISE leadership, the management, the program office for their support and hospitality. And it's especially nice because I've moved to the northeast. I live in Shillong. Patricia also lives in Shillong on another hill. And it's nice to be back from time to time. We're delighted at the very opening. We're going to have chair's remarks from Dr. Rami Chabra. Dr. Rami Chabra usually doesn't need an introduction. Everybody here knows her as an acclaimed feminist, columnist for many years in at least 4 or 5 major newspapers, a person who has distinguished herself in the field of not just of feminism, but of family planning as one of the first head, was it, of the Family Planning Foundation?
No, I worked with them.
You worked with them very closely and drove after a time when during the emergency, a rather dark and dismal time of 75, 77, when family planning got a bad name, you were able to revive the program and, essentially help India move forward. And apart from the many hats that she wears, she's also become a novelist. I believe the latest, she wants me to plug this, okay? So I'll also plug my book at the end of this, but at the beginning I'll plug her book, Becoming the Storm, 2024. Who's the publisher?
Blue Ink.
Blue Ink, okay, great. So you have opening remarks as the chair, about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Sanjoy, for that introduction. And I'm privileged to be here on this last talk in this year's IIC festival, which itself is so tellingly titled, Sa Vanita, Thus She Speaks. These are musical words to ears that have literally gone deaf now, not to mention a throat that is growing hoarse, from a half-century of efforts to try and speak in the din for issues and voices that are not being heard. I wonder if I'm letting my imagination fly fondly to find resonance in mere names, or is there really a call out there, still faint and struggling, that it is time to hear women in the world, a world grown too messy and unequal. You have here today a very distinguished panel of women from the Northeast who have made their mark despite the odds in a region of strange paradoxes, of the most diverse ethnicity, 2,138 groups, if I remember rightly from Patricia's book, a huge volume that you all should look at on the Northeast, and a hot spot of almost unequaled biodiversity in the world. A place of plenty, but also problems galore. One that has gone from periphery to center stage, as we realize we have more to learn from there than to tell. And I will leave the introduction of the issues and the distinguished ladies on the stage to Sanjoy Hazarika, the equally distinguished human rights activist and journalist who is specialized in the region and who will moderate the discussion in a few minutes. But for those of us who are now, what should I call, fossil relics of a time gone past remembrance, memory is perhaps the most useful contribution to a debate of this kind for what we have reached, which I don't know how many of you remember a story that we used to, rather a quiz that we used to give in the old days. That this is the 29th day. It's about a pond that is getting swamped, and the rate of swamping doubles each day. And on the 28th day, half the pond is a swamp. And how many days will it take? How many days have we left to clean the swamp? It was a question that we used to ask, and it's a question that we still need to ask. It was 50 years ago that in this very building, not in this room, but in the conference room 1, that the late distinguished demographers, the doctors Ashish Bose, Ashok Mitra, and P.B. Desai, and I focused public attention to the seminal report towards equality that had just been released that summer, bringing to the fore the devastating information on the reality of the lives of the great mass of Indian women, the most searing indictment of which was the declining sex ratio, which had plummeted from 970 per thousand men to 900 at the time of independence to 930 in the 1971 census. And with family sizes of 4 to 5 and maternal mortality of nearly 500 per 100,000 live births, amongst the highest in the world. But even as we realized then, with horror, the vast gap between the precept of equality in our 2-decade-old constitution and the hard facts of practical existence for the great majority of women at the same time, there was hope and celebration in the air. As we joined forces to combat the reality in what was becoming known as the second women's movement. The first, of course, as we all know, was the freedom struggle, when Gandhiji himself used feminine perspectives of satyagraha and ahimsa to bring about strategies of opposition that nobody could have visualized at that time, and achieved independence, creating a model for the world. It was a time, that year, 1975, which was called the International Women's Year, that summer 5,000 women had met in Mexico City in the first UN Conference on Women, and the exchange had opened our eyes to the fact that what we had considered to be individual, personal problems really had a universal span. But we were fortified at that time in thinking that wrongs of centuries of gender discrimination and discrimination of all other kinds would now be sorted out because the world itself had realized that this was not to be so. And then we thought the 20th century would be the century of the woman. But as Eartha Kitt breathed heavily in a song that was sung in those 70s, under the bridges of Paris with you, I will make your dreams come true, and then said, n'est-ce pas, not to be. It was not to be. I look back at that brilliant, glittering gathering, and two memories surge to the fore. The conference logo that not only loomed strong at every venue, but which we brought back, not just in our memories, but boldly wore on bags and on saris that we had printed, and which symbolized beautifully, carried the intertwined symbols of equality and development, nestling under the dove of peace. And the other memory is of a ruddy-faced Yasser Arafat, glowing with pride and hope for the realization of a Palestine home state very soon, and handing me his black and white kafaya as an invitation card to come and visit as soon as the state was formed. Nespa, it was not to be. Arafat himself is long gone, a disillusioned man, and we still hope. But that is not to say that gloom and doom is all. Women have come far. They have broken many glass ceilings. They are found to be found in places that we have never even envisioned so far. Recently, I became the come-to person for IIC nominations, and I found there was somebody sitting here, and we both have battled on this issue before that. What is it that I can't even pronounce the long Hindi name of the law that came in that was guaranteeing 33% women's representation, but which, and everybody clapped, because everybody said, of course, women have to be there. But when, where, how, nobody asked. So there is much to be said about all this, but that will have to wait another time. Right now, let me suffice it to say, we women do not look to work only for our own advancement. The vast majority of women seek equality within a more equal world, all around. But the world is growing more drastically unequal. So we need transformative politics, transformative perspectives, transformative development trajectories that do not blindly mimic the failed Western model, or twist equality into a zero-sum game. Women's place is in the sun, but not by displacement of men, but through a different trajectory of mutual respect and dignity, of compatibility with cooperation, even in competition, and a true democracy that benefits all. So one hopes that women like Patricia Mukhim, here whose articles I have read with great interest, opening my eyes that even the traditional tribal structures or the more scarce matrilineal systems that we once wanted as symbols and ideals of what could happen for women, that even those examples of the Naga Women's Mothers Association that worked and brought about the peace accord, but that had no place in the peace thereafter, or the Mera Paibis, the torchbearers of the night, who walked fiercely and saw to it that women were safe, and saw to it that men did not drink. But then came the tribal divide, and even the Mera Paibis were no more what we imagined them to be. So how then to distill new wisdom from the old and new bottles, and to work for equality that should have been ours decades ago, but that yet remains a work in progress? People like me have no answers, but I look to the women around on this table who have fought their way through many odds in a difficult terrain, brought the Northeast from the periphery to the center to give us some insights into what could happen. And so I turn to Sanjoy, Hazarika, who will ably moderate the discussion from her.
Thank you, Dr. Chabra, for your remarks and the context in which you've put everything, the universal context, shall we say. Um, I am very keen to, many of you are curious as to what this um, creature is sitting on the IIC conference table, but we shall come, you'll have to wait to be, for this mystery to be solved after a few minutes. It'll be solved during one of the presentations, and I can tell you it's going to be a cracker. Just two brief remarks I wanted to make before we plunge into the panel's presentations and discussions. One is that I hope that this conversation and the presentations of the panelists will help break some of the stereotypes about and the romantic ideas that exist about conditions in the region, which are not romantic at all. It's neither a sparkling star nor is it down in the depths of hell, but it's there are many issues which one has to struggle with, and we have four of the best, truly among the best presenters to share their perspectives on the subject. I mean, we think of whether it's patriarchy, which you will be addressing, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, the pressure on the environment, the issue of borders, fungible borders, border violence, strategic interventions, all these things, poverty and growth, all these things come together. And I sometimes I do believe that each of you will bring a very unique perspective to the table. The second thing is something I'm sure all of you have seen on television. And all of you have wondered, perhaps, what explains this. Lakhs of people coming out in the streets to mourn a singer in Assam. Not just in Guwahati, but across the state, in every town, every little city, because there are no great cities there, every village in Assam. And it cut across language divides, religious divides, caste divides. This was Zubin Garg. So, what is it that brought people together? This person did in his death, because the Northeast and especially Assam is often derided as being anti-minority. It is not the state which is anti-minority, nor the people anti-minority. Sometimes it is parties which may be anti-minority, this or that. So we need to make a difference. So I think Assam has shown very clearly and turned its back on those who deride us and the traditions. So in his death, we remember him with sadness, kindness, and appreciation, and I hope that Assam will remain united and equal for everybody. We're going to do the conversation like this. We have an approach in the sense that first Dr. Rakhee Kalita will start, then it will be Patricia who will fire next, then it will be Dr. Stuti Goswami, and finally Dr. Purnima Burman. And let me introduce the first panelist. Rakhee Kalita is professor and head of the Department of English and chair of the Women's Studies Center at Cotton University in Guwahati. Her work focuses on eco-feminism, gender, and Northeast studies, and she has held fellowships in Oxford and Teen Murti. And her coming monograph, a book, is of women rebels in Assam, or the Northeast, called Under the Shadow of the Red Sun, Gender, Power, and Imagery in the Northeast. And Rakhee, it's all yours, but I'll just toss a couple of questions to you, which you may think about as you speak. What did the women that you spoke to, at some point you'll come to this, find most challenging the conditions that they lived in. That's one. And the other is, they were not really combatants, most of them. I mean, even in Nagaland, they are not combatants, they're sometimes guards. So, and what kind of support did they have, if any, from men, whether their own companions or partners or spouses? So it's yours. Please.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, before you, everybody has 10 minutes.
Okay.
If you can finish in 9, it's better. But anyway.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, IIC. This wonderful convention, Savanita, which privileges us women who speak, who have spoken, who are yet to speak, I hope. And with the permission of the chair, Dr. Rami Chabra, I think this afternoon's discussion on the title of this panel actually is a little provocative, makes you think and think backward and then think further ahead, is working for an equal woman, for an equal world. And very quickly, because my co-panelist Patricia's book, which is very well known, called Waiting for an Equal World, seems to sort of, almost anticipate this particular panel or this particular theme of whether we wait and we watch or we work. And I think some of our thoughts are probably going to answer that question. It will always be a back and forth, but yes. And I think it's a very good time, very opportune time to remember the historic step that you mentioned about the Committee for the Status of Women 50 years ago. And we talked about the equality report, the Towards Equality report, which was historic in terms of revealing the kind of differences and the kind of huge chasms that we had in terms of what was policy and what was practice, what was intended for women, provisions, but what was reality. And I think it generally awakened, as you rightly said, it awakened this kind of fervor in us women and in the women of that generation to try and bridge that gap between policy and practice, and we were looking at reforms. So, of course, it hardly needs reiterating that we've come a long way from those times, 50 years, 5 decades, and there have been significant interventions. We've seen interventions, and these interventions have helped to push women, both by provisions that were rested in a colonial, in a post-colonial state, and by virtue of the agency of these women themselves, as to how they would look at the decades ahead. How could women actually march together? And equality was important. While we were probably idealizing equity, it was equality which was still problematic at that moment. And so it becomes an important moment now to ask the question as to what have we achieved in the field of women's status, in how we are and what we've achieved, and what are our goals and what are our desires. What are we women all about? And therefore, I think, especially in the context of Northeast India, which we are discussing, once a peripheral nation by perception, but also by fact, corroborated by fact. It's not always right to say that the periphery is no longer the periphery. We've moved towards centers, and margins have become centers. But at the same time, I think a lot of facts still corroborate many factors on the ground, continue to corroborate the fact that, yes, we are out there, somewhere out there. But my point of entry into this conversation actually will seek to answer what Sanjoy Hazarika just asked me, and also thoughts around the work that I had done as a postdoctoral researcher. My work was focused around the women combatants and women rebels. It's wrong to just use the word combatant, as Sanjoy has already pointed out. Were they really combatants? But they were rebels. And I think the important thing that they sought to define at that moment, it was a defining moment in the sense that apart from the public histories that we are all aware of, what is important is that it highlighted the state of the region, which is already under the grip of, for several years, for several decades, under the grip of subnational, liberatory, homeland politics, movements, and therefore heavy militarization. So in that context, you see, it threw into sharper relief the idea of social hierarchies, gendered hierarchies, and how the social mapping could be done. How did we have, did it give us a different kind of social map? And as an academic, when I looked into the lives of these combatants, Sanjay asked me, I come back to that point, what were their challenges? So the very moment these women who were collegiate, young collegiate women in a very small, very young age group between, let us say, 16, 17 to about 25, 28, very young, still very young women, who plunged into what was a rebellion, a moment of rebellion. And what was important was, it was not that this moment of rebellion, it was about women just suddenly liberating themselves. But I think the women's challenges during the rebellion and in the fact of their joining the rebellion seem to come from other hierarchies, newer hierarchies that they were faced by within the camps in which they joined, in which they were enlisted. Many of these women who I studied, who I researched, these women were not direct combatants. They were not always women who were armed. There were, at least as far as I remember, there were just about a handful of women who were lieutenants and second lieutenants and officers who would wield the gun and who would march into the front ranks. But what was important was that there was this host of, women rebels, these very young women, who all seemed to work for something that was symbolic, something that almost harks back to what Sanjay started with, the moment of the death of a artist, or the moment of the death of a young singer from Assam, who seems to sort of unite the people's aspirations, their desires, their identities. So these women sought to actually redefine the nature of women of Assam. And by seeking to join what was already completely, beyond anyone's ability or beyond anyone's boundary, by seeking to step beyond the borders, I think these women were establishing at one level, they were breaking the stereotype. Women who went beyond the borders, who joined rebellions, were often labeled bad women. There was an Assamese term for it, Beaswali. So which meant literally bad girls. So these were bad girls who upturned and upstaged the entire hierarchy. And I look at it, it's of course a motif, it's also a symbol. It's at best a metaphor, because conflict then, fizzled away, and we've entered the realm of post-conflict or peacemaking, and after those decades, these women's lives too changed. But what was important was that these women, and I repeat, that these women whose symbolic lives within a non-state group did not fulfill their initial aspirations, actually charted a trajectory of empowerment and disempowerment. So they went with hopes and aspirations. Inside the camps, as was mostly expected, it was a male world. It was a patriarchal world. And a lot of South Asian rebellions, actually insurgencies, have already shown that to us. Sri Lanka being the best example, the international example that we have in the subcontinent. So I think what was important was, and what I want to really flag here, is what does the image of these Assamese combatants, support bases from the females, from women's groups, what did they change? Was it a transformative moment? And that was the most important research question that I had. Was it a transformative moment? And my answer is yes. It was a moment of transformation, because what came out of these years and decades of rebellion, we all know, I don't want to go into the public history, one knows how it ended, and we're still in a stage of, protracted peace work throughout the region. So, but what happened really was that women of the 1990s and 2000s in Assam actually ushered in an era of liberalization among women, and women's collectives actually grew. It was the moment which ushered in collectives of women, whether it was Nagaland, whether it was Assam, whether it was Meghalaya. And these collectives, I think, not only broke the stereotype, but my ethnography suggests that while the numbers were small, they actually brought in a significant representation in a society which, and I really want to underscore this, is that the perception about the Northeast and Northeast women from the Northeast has largely been about a liberatory practice, about emancipation, about freer spaces, which had been busted by women from the Northeast themselves. These women have repeatedly busted that myth. Patricia's book highlights it. She talks about matrilinees that don't work and matriarchal systems that go bust. So within this trajectory of empowerment and disempowerment, women who went into the camps actually came out more empowered than they imagined they were within the camps. Actually, the camps were spaces of dispossession, disempowerment, because they were only treated like support bases. They were like helps. They were doing, collateral kind of support system without having the power of decision making, which then actually moves into the ambit of also electoral politics and representative politics across the region. So Nagaland is there. We've had, after 75 years of independence in the region, in Nagaland, we already saw that it was just a couple of years ago when women legislatures for the first time stepped into politics and into decision making. And we know all of that. But I think, I hope for the first, notes, because I know I'm speaking more than I ought to.
No, you can fire away, but you need to preserve some fire for the second round. So you don't have to shoot all your armory.
Thank you. I'll just stop on this question, and which is that we do need to debunk certain myths about the Northeast and women there. But we also need to look at the fact, and which I think will be the second part of our conversation, where I would hope to also have an interaction with my co-panelists, is how women's collectives have stepped into larger areas of freedom and equality, such as environmental freedoms, justice, ecological freedoms. And we have a shining example at the end of the table there, Purnima, who's the conservationist who's been able to, mobilize an entire army. So at one point we talked about armies of women rebels, and now we have armies of women conservationists. I'll stop there for the moment.
Thank you, Rakhee, for that input. In fact, one thing that we might think about, and not being cynical, is the collectives of women and the fact that there has been this upsurge. There are more, perhaps, women who are representing communities and so on, but it hasn't broken the glass ceiling yet. They're still in a situation of shall we say, they're still facing a problem in that competitive space. So, the next panelist is Patricia Mukhim. I was going to say that she needs no introduction. Then I said, no, better say something about her. I have to live in Shillong. It's not a good thing to have a hostile editor, is there anyway? So, well, she's an old friend and fellow scribe, and as you know, the editor of the Shillong Times, a columnist for numerous papers. If you want to read about Zuven, read her article today in the Indian Express. You can read mine also. I mean, that's a separate thing. But and she combines the roles of media professionals with that of a very strong activist on many issues, whether it's patriarchy, fighting patriarchy, whether it's standing up for uncomfortable and unusual or unpopular causes. You shouldn't specialize in that, right? And getting firebombed. Her house was firebombed in 2018. And she goes around even in Shillong with a guard. She's faced defamation attacks and been jailed, at least in the rising of the court, shall we say, and so on. But she battles on, and I think she's also got these 2 new books out on geopolitics in India's northeast, from isolation to integration, collections of her writing. So with Patricia, you're always thinking that things can't get more difficult for her, than they are already, but she finds a way of finding the most challenging thing and taking them on. For instance, every second Saturday in Shillong, she goes with a team of young school students and others to clean up one part of a river. She walks the talk. And I think that's very important for all of us to know, that there are people doing this. And one thing you might like to perhaps mention is what's been really the most challenging time that you faced when you almost gave up.
Thank you very much, Sanjoy, for that very kind introduction. So we actually represent 7 very dynamic states with so many cultures, subcultures, languages, that it's difficult to encompass everything in a sitting like this. But I think the Northeast has now gone from being a soulless geography to an instrument of political transaction, unfortunately. The elected are very, very good at transacting business with the powers that are in Delhi. So what is the fate of women in the Northeast? Many of us have fallen between the cracks, managed to crawl back instead of giving in to victimhood and then fading into the margins, because there is no choice but to fight back. Recently, in the month of September, a Naga activist and a teacher in Nagaland University, Rosemary Dvichu, got a death threat because she had been fighting for the cause of women's representation in urban local bodies. I mean, it was a very open death threat on social media. So, in Meghalaya, the person got arrested, but you know how it is, they'll just come out of jail in no time. In Meghalaya, we have grassroots institutions where women are not allowed to hold office. And you can guess why. They use the ruse of tradition as to why women cannot be elected to these traditional bodies. In my state, women generally don't speak up publicly because there's a term for such women. They are called the hens that crow. And it's a, you feel very defamed when a man says that, sit down, you shouldn't crow like a cock. I mean, you are a woman, you are not a male chicken, so just sit down. And very often they say that what you speak doesn't make sense. So I thought we should be looking at the words equality and equity also in this session, because to me, equity means being fair, ensuring impartial distribution of resources based on the needs of every woman or group. Very often when you are represented at the high table, it's always the men who sit there to deliberate on what they can do for women. Why can't powerless women, why can't the weakest woman from the village also be allowed to speak? This has been my constant question to the government, because it is only then that you will be able to understand and make policies. And one of the really bad governance models in at least my state is that we don't have data to begin work on. We have a big number of women who are single mothers. Marriages are very brittle in my state. If a man and a woman live together, that's accepted. She gives birth to children. The day he feels he wants to walk out of that relationship, he can just walk out. No one can say anything at all. Even if people are married in the church, it is still accepted for a man to walk out and to just leave the children behind because we are matrilineal. He doesn't take the children with him. So sometimes when people come from the rest of India or even from foreign countries, from Germany and others, to do an interview with us because they think we are, they romanticize us. They think we are the last remaining symbols of matriarchy. Actually, we are not even matriarchy. We are a matrilineal with a patriarchal worldview. I keep telling them that. So they come, they want to interview you, they want you to fall in line. And I'm telling them, no, this has to be dismantled, this has to be deconstructed. Life is not easy for us at all. So then they go back very disappointed. And then these people who come in from the outside, they believe that it's normal, for women to feel empowered. They're already empowered, but it doesn't work that way. I think gender sensitivity does not come naturally. We have to be trained on that. We have to understand the nuances. We have to really read up. And as a matrilineal state, we have the highest infant mortality, the highest maternal mortality, and as I said earlier, very large number of female-headed households. And that is a problem. And why this happens is also because we have a huge number of teenage pregnancies. So young girls drop out of school, and the next thing is they have a sexual encounter. And because we're also hush-hush about sex and about protected sex, you can't even talk about it. So the young girl gets pregnant. By age 20, she has about 5 kids. The man has left. She has no skills. So you can imagine life in rural Meghalaya it's very cruel. And I'm talking about equity because those of us sitting here are not all of the same height. So those who are shorter must be given a little bench to stand on which, they will measure up to their peers. And that is what equity is all about, that we need to understand specific needs of women in a specific village. It's not the same for everyone. And those who work for equality think that when they when they implement certain policies, that it will benefit everyone equally, that the outcomes will be equal. I think this is a myth that needs to be busted, because when you really understand what is it that troubles women in a particular village, it's then that you will be able to allocate resources specifically for those problems to be alleviated. And I have a problem when equality and equity are conflated, because equality does not take into account all these discrepancies that are there in women's groups. We still face structural oppression, which are, related to religion, race, then even the village that you come from. So I think if we are to look at understanding empowerment, we really have to understand the difference, the basic difference between equality and equity, because distributing the same resources will not produce the desired outcome. And that is the reason why government programs fail. In the first place, they are not taking into account what really are the women suffering from, what really do they need to come up to a certain level. So I think there are a lot of studies which show that equality as an instrument does not create balance. On the contrary, it creates more inequity. We look at education, for instance. I come from a state where the educational outcomes are very, very poor. Sanjoy knows this very well, because we have a little group that's trying to understand the reasons for this very retarded kind of educational outcome. And then we realize that you are actually allocating the same resources for schools in urban areas and schools in rural areas. Whereas, in urban areas, somehow the government will make a proper school because the urban areas are so visible. In the rural areas, you should go in the rainy seasons and find that schools are underwater. How can students then go to school? So we have a huge dropout rate. We have the highest stunting rates for children. I don't know what else to say. If we really don't get our act together, I'm afraid we might. Even in recent times, that PGI survey has found Meghalaya to be just a little above Bihar.
No, it's at the bottom.
Yeah, at the bottom, yes, you're right, at the bottom. So, and talking about women in politics, you'd be surprised to know in a house of 60 MLAs, we have only 4 women legislators. We had 1 woman minister between 2018 to now, to last year, no, this year.
Just a few months ago.
Few months ago. And in the reshuffle, she was dropped. And she was looking after health, she was looking after agriculture. She was doing very well, in fact. She got dropped. Now it's an all-male government. So, in a matrilineal society. Every time we head for elections, we have journalists coming from across the country and asking us, how many women candidates do you have, and who all are contesting? Even the ones that contest usually come from political homes, political backgrounds. Because politics, today I was talking to a journalist friend, and he said that we are no longer a democracy. We've become a moneycracy, because you can't fight elections without money. Then how do you get the right people to come in? I think Sanjoy has given me a warning to stop, so I'll stop here for now. We can come back later.
Yeah, thank you very much, Patricia. I think there's a lot that you've said, and a lot which is unsaid, which needs to be. And one of the things that we need to, I like this matrilineal with the patriarchal view, but the issue of teenage pregnancies, young girls dropping out of school, is really a common phenomenon across the Northeast. We find it in Assam, we find it not so much in Mizoram, but certainly in Assam it's a huge problem. And as a result, child marriage, children get married off very early, and then you have, since I work on health and maternal health, and we'll talk about that later. So that's a real a real concern, this huge deficit that we have. So I hope that slowly, I mean, people like Mr. Nedwan and others know some of the situations, Professor Gopinath. But, you know, we need to revisit the region in terms of what we think of it, you know, our perspectives, because often they're based on a rather romantic notion of what was, perhaps at one time, but is no longer equal or equitable. We're coming to Stuti Goswami, who's an assistant professor at the Assam Royal Global University in Guwahati. She's a prolific translator, has been at work on translations for 20 years, and I think you're one of the new things you're doing is translating from Assamese to Marathi. Marathi to Assamese. That's really quite unique. I don't think I've heard of that before. And her interests, of course, apart from translation, print, modernity studies, print modernity, plant studies. And her latest work is scheduled to come out next year, right? Yes. It's actually plant narratives from variegated ecosystems, reading from Northeast India. And I suppose one of the common things, at least for the last three speakers, which binds in a way the presentations together, is a focus on ecology. Even if Patricia hasn't spoken of it, she is working on these issues. And of course, you will hear from Purnima. So go ahead.
Thank you, Sanjoy da. And namaskar. And I'm Stuti Goswami. I basically, my parent discipline is literature. I teach English literature. But one of my core areas of interest and work has also been history, particularly historiography. And I believe history is important, particularly Assam's history, British history. So I believe history is important not only because to know the past, but because history, the past really informs the present. And today, as I was just sitting on this panel, listening to all these distinguished speakers, I almost for a split second forgot I was also supposed to speak. But the whole point is that and we do have, I'll leave myself aside, but we do have definitely three extremely eminent and distinguished personalities from Northeast India, the three women, my co-panelists, and Sanjoy sir, of course. Now, the point is that these empowered women, and I would say that empowered women, I believe, are empowered also because they are empowering. They are not only empowered themselves, but they are also so brilliant, that's so good, that they inspire a generation, or two at least. And from that perspective, before I really go into into print modernity and women, which is also one of my current book projects I'm working on, I definitely would like to mention a few figures, very, very strong. And I would not really go into the mythical figures that often are associated with, particularly Assam, Kamakhya and all. I'd rather like to go back, let's say, roughly 100 years, 100, 120 years, and I'll just mention them cursorily, a few very, very strong women who actually give us an idea of the litany of empowered women that the region has had. One is, and I'll start off with a young 15-year-old, one of the youngest, if not the youngest, martyr of the Indian freedom struggle, Kalita. So she was martyred. This was during the Quit India movement, and as a 15-year-old, she led a procession of peaceful, non-violent protesters as they attempted to hoist the tricolour at a police outpost in a place called Gauhpur, which is in Assam. She was shot dead because of that during the protest. So this is the first person I want to invoke here, Kalita Borua. Of course, there was a Mrityu Bahini, which was a death squad, not the terrorist kind of death squad, but basically they were all willing to give up their lives for the sake of the country. The next figure is Gaidinlu Pame. Jawaharlal Nehru gave her the epithet Rani Gaidinlu, but she is Gaidinlu Pame, born in present-day Manipur. Rongmei Naga lady. So she was a Naga spiritual leader, but she was also a revolutionary. She was also one of, at the very hem of uh, anti-British efforts in Northeast India. That's the second figure. And we are still in the 1915s. The next person I would like to mention is a lady who is Indira Miri. She's also very popularly known as Mereng, but she was again born in 1910. She was one of the earliest, what do I say, educationists in the region. And she worked extensively. She was appointed as the Chief Education Officer of NEFA, Northeast Frontier Agency. This was right around the time of India's independence, 1947. And for 10 years, she crusaded, literally crusaded for education, particularly of girls and women in the region. So Indira Henapati, she was born Indira Senapati or Henapati, and then she became, we all know her as Indira Miri. The next person is, the next person is a lady who actually acquired a cult status of sorts, thank Fakhri Tehsildar. So she again is a late 19th century born, early 20th century figure. She was actually from the Boro community of Assam, and she became a Tehsildar. And initially, it's very interesting that initially she did kind of was loyal to the British policies because she thought it was beneficial for empowerment of women and all. But as she started collecting taxes, it became evident to her that there were a lot of flaws in those policies. And eventually, of course, she also joined the freedom movement. The last person, not the least, but I want to mention is from Manipur. She is Maharaj Kumari Binodini Devi, MK Binodini. She is one of the pioneering feminist writers also of the region. And Binodini, she is one author who's really straddled a lot of different genres. So from radio plays and short stories to essays, travelogues, memoir, she's literally written it all, and novel, of course. So these are just five major figures who all spoke. So they were also women who spoke in their own ways, through their actions, through their works, and what we say, the word and the praxis. So they were those women. From this, I would really like to segue my deliberations into what is also one of my current, as I mentioned, book projects. It's a twin book project, really. I'm doing with a friend. And what we are focusing on, because Sir already mentioned that print modernity is one of my areas of work, and what we are looking at is a whole set of women writers from Assam who were published, and they're all from the early 20th century. Now, just for context, Assam has a very, very strong and rich Assamese language. In Assamese language, there's a very strong and rich periodical tradition. So the first periodical came out in 1846, Arunodai, and from then on, there has been a series of Assamese language periodicals which gave a platform to a lot of native writers. They gave a window to the local readers of the world, and also they also in their own ways contributed towards what was at the time Assamese linguistic assertion, which was also very coeval with the nationalist emergence of nationalist sentiment. So this book project of ours basically is a twin book project. One is a monograph that we're writing. I'm writing with my friend actually, Sanjoy Paul Deka. And the other is we have selected around 42 essays, 42 to 50 essays and articles, all written by women writers. So we have around 22 as of now, different women writers. The interesting part is that many of them are not only known elsewhere, in Assam also a lot of people probably don't know. And the further interesting part is that there were some authors that we realized their family members also didn't know much of. So, like we have the text. Let's say we have an article published in 1925 or 1929. We know the name of the author, but especially my friend who did a lot of groundwork, what we also found out was that we didn't really know. So my friend Sanjeev had to actually put up Facebook post or WhatsApp status. This is the name of the lady. Does anyone know about her? And a lot of times we didn't find. So, but even then, what is very interesting is that, and of course, we have a lot of women to speak of. I'll just mention a few thematically. So, three really interesting areas that really come up when we look at the kind of articles, and I'm only talking about majorly periodicals in the periodical pages. And around the turn of so the women that I'm referring to are all women writers who were published around the turn of the 20th century till around 1932, 35. And three very, very interesting aspects come out. One is education. A lot of the articles, actually, especially from the 1920s, they focus on the importance of women being educated. If I may be allowed, I'd just like to mention a couple of the authors and some of their writings. So there is this article that actually goes back to the 1920s, Padmavati Devi Fukononi. So these are all Assamese like language women writers. Padmavati Devi Fukononi, so and Bishnupriya Devi. So these are among the earlier ones. So they were born around end of 19th century. So they emphasize a lot on education for emancipation of women. But the interesting part is that a lot of times their argument is that the emancipation of women is needed and education is needed for that in order to run the household well. But from that, as we gradually come towards the later part, so then we have late 1920s, I guess 1920s, we have articles like, there's this author, Lavanya Prabha Bora. She writes Sri Hikkar Bikhoy Ekahar, which means a few words about women's education. And there, she says something very interesting. She says that boys and girls should be educated, but they should have a university degree. So, and the other thing that she says, Lavanya Prabha Bora in her other writings also emphasize a lot on the importance of weaving. That's the other aspect I would have come to. So anyway, so she says that girls should have university degree. And then Swarnalata Khoikya, in another, she also, in one of her essays, she says that she focuses on women's education, and she says that it is a woman's right to be educated. And please remember, we are still in 1930. We have not even reached 1940s. We are still in end of 1920s here, maybe 1930. Then there is this author called Kanuklata Choliha. She actually has translated quite a bit. So she has translated a book, an article on science worker Marie Curie. Then she has talked about child welfare. Then she's also talked about women of Japan. So there what she talks about is that she says that in Japan, the women are at par with men. And there's one more author actually who talks about something similar. So she says that there are a lot of women in Japan, women are working at par with men. And they engage in all kinds of professions. And she mentions the professions: singer, writer, weaver, like different things, doctor. And she says that is also one reason why the economy of Japan is progressing, because women are also equally engaged in professions. There's this other I'm sorry, yes, Punya Prabha Das also writes. In fact, she has this article called Bharator Obosthar Bikhoy Obhijog, which means basically some complaints about India. So basically, yeah, she says that Japanese women, again, and it's very interesting how Japan is invoked in a lot of these articles. Then one more. So this was education. So women's education was something that a lot of these writers wrote about. By the way, I also have to add, some of these published writings were not only articles, they were also speeches. So they used to have Joymoti. Joymoti Kuori is a historical figure from Assam, an Ahom princess who gave up her life to save her husband, basically. And she became a mythical figure of sorts. So in Jorhat in Assam, and in other parts also, Joymoti Uthov used to be organized. So celebration of Joymoti, and there were these organizations where there were these gatherings where they were all women gatherings, basically. And so these speeches were also published in some of the periodicals later on. So the kind of texts I'm referring to here are not only articles, but also speeches. And then there's the other one is weaving. Now, there's a lot of emphasis on weaving. So first was education, second is weaving, the third is social reform. I'll just quickly touch upon this. Hiranyaprabha Das has written, Kyo Khador Pinhim, why should we wear khadi? So she gives not only asserts why it is important. It's Gandhi has given a clarion call and all. She's also in this article particularly given a proper breakdown of how much costs are incurred in buying cloths that are brought from Manchester, the machine-made cloths. So she asserts at the end of this article that therefore we should give emphasis on weaving because it's a skill of the women of Assam, and therefore they are supposed to not only continue this skill and tradition, but it's also good for revenue generation. And I would like to assert that we are still in the 1930s. We have not even crossed 1942 here. This is one article. Then again, Lavanya Prabha Bora also talks about weaving as a means of economic empowerment of women. She writes, the last one I would like to mention is social reform. Now, there were different aspects of that. One particularly I'll definitely mention, and I would like to wrap up my current deliberations on that, is widow remarriage. Now, in Assam, there's a figure, late 19th century, Gunabhiram Borwa, who made a cause stir by marrying a widow. But that's not the point that I'm trying to make here. In another journal called Bahin, there was a series of public debates on widow remarriage. And both male writers and female writers participated in it. So there was a whole, in fact, it was Bidhoba is widow. So Bidhobar Bibah, so widow remarriage, widow marriage. Both male writers wrote and female writers gave counter to that. So that's a very interesting kind of, which also shows us how even back in the, I don't know if I should say even back, but back in the 1930s, earlier, no, till the 1935, 1940, we see these kind of discussions. So widow marriage, then of course there are other discussions like how should a woman behave? How there are also discussions on Islam Aro Swalir Hikha, Islam and girls' education. Different kinds of writings come up when we look at these and I just want to add that till now I don't really have a lot of field work, but I can definitely talk about my archival work. So I would like to end for now on the point that the women writers, and we have all writers here, ma'am is here, Patricia ma'am is here, the women writers from Northeast India have played a major impact. But it's not fair to not talk about the people who have actually taken who took the cudgels like 100 years before or maybe 80 years before. So because ultimately we are all from that litany and tradition of empowered women who has spoken. Thank you.
And that was really fascinating. I mean, I really learned a lot from that presentation. Thank you, Stuti, especially the discussions on women, widow remarriage and education in Islam and so on. We are now coming to the last presenter, Purnima Devi Roman is really quite an extraordinary figure. She is the recipient of the UNEP Champions of the Earth Award, the UN's highest environmental award honor, and has received multiple other awards and honors, including the Green Oscars, the Nari Shakti Puraskar. And there is much more that one can say, here. But I will say just this. If you are any of you to meet a person who has actually brought a species on Earth back from extinction, this is her. So there are very, very few people like that. I can think of Jane Goodall, but in this country, I'm sure there are, but I can't think of any. So this is an extraordinary story. I'll ask her to tell a story in her own very compelling way. Her daughter, Sampriti, will be helping her, I think. But I've asked Purnima very kindly, to also talk about the battle within, give us some context, because as a zoologist, as a species specialist, she goes into the field and climbs trees and mountains and deals with villages. But there were some constraints professionally which she faced, and there were some challenges that she faced as an individual, not just as a woman, but as an individual when she went into the community. So, over to you.
So I would prefer to stand up and speak. So thank you so much, Sanjoy Hazarika sir, and IIC for inviting me. Thank you so much, respected director sir, and all my co-panelists, and all the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. So I feel very honored to be here and to hear all of you. I get motivated and goosebumps. And so yes, as sir asked about the species, the bird. So yes, I was introduced as Purnima. So I request all of you to forget my name and remember one name, that is Hargila bird. This is the Hargila bird. I come here as Hargila bird. This is the greater adjutant stork. Yeah, wherever I go, I come as Hargila bird. And yes, sorry, sir. Yeah, so thank you. Yeah. So this is the Hargila bird, and Hargila means itself. If you just see the word Hargila, Har means bones, and Gila means swallow. So bone eater, like in Assam, Har Gili Khai means bone swallowers. So the name itself tells the perception. So our story is about the perception. My entire journey is about the changes of perception. So Hargila bird in English, it is called the greater adjutant stork, and they work like the military officers, so they are adjutant storks. Yeah. So yes, so I wish I could bring a flock of Hargila with me. Yeah, so yeah, but I find Hargila in me and all of whoever I meet. But yes, I could see Hargila bird in a different way. You already saw the Hargila bird. This is the headdress. Our women wear it, and we go from village to village like this. I would love to go like this also wherever I go, but people would laugh, and so that's why. Yeah, so wherever I go, I carry this with me. So then I would like to show you the Hargila bird in a different way in my Assamese Mekhela Sadar, made by our women, Hargila Army. So we link conservation into livelihood. So I believe that conservation is isolated if we don't integrate with livelihood. And we, thank you so much. I always tell that our passion becomes fashion now. It's a symbol of fashion. Yes, so you can see the Hargila bird in my ears, yeah. So, and in my here also, neck, yeah, soul, and I want to spread this love for the Hargila bird with all of you, the love of nature, the biodiversity of nature. I want to make a team, and the Hargila birds, when they expand their wings, they are like 8 feet wide. And I always encourage people to dream like and soar like the Hargila bird. I can show you the Hargila bird in a, yeah, so yeah, you can see how majestic bird is it. But can you believe that this bird was often misunderstood? And I would like to tell you, like as Sanjay sir asked, how the story began, and how I had to break the stereotype, and now how many of thousands and thousands women are breaking the stereotype. So meet our Hargila army and see our Hargila bird. So yeah, so please show the Hargila bird. Yes. So maybe I would also love to take you to our village with a connection. Like if you would like to join me, maybe it's not obligatory, but if some of you join, I want you to connect with the Hargila birds. Wherever I go, I do it. So I just want, I request all of you to use your hands like this, like the beak of the Hargila birds. Imagine you are at the 100 feet tall trees, kadam trees, the nesting trees, and then please say with me, tak tak tak, tak tak tak, tak tak tak. Once more, tak tak tak. Now please say fast with me, tak 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 tak. Thank you so much. So thank you so much. So this is the, you might be wondering what is this sound. So can you connect with the Hargila birds, the nature? So this is called bill clattering. The birds, they have long beak. They make these sounds all the time in the nest, in the trees. And I keep climbing the 100-feet bamboo platforms, and I watch them, and they are doing these sounds, and I feel this sound is so optimistic, so positive. So it gives me hope. And how this story began, I think you will realize the necessity to save a species, and all the perception. So it was in 2007, yeah, long back. So at that time I was pursuing my PhD, Hargila, the storks and the wetlands, and but I couldn't do well. At that time I became a mother of twin babies, so they were very young in my lab, and then I started studying at my home, and I was waiting for my babies to grow up so that I can go to the field. They were 2.5 years old, and then one day I got a call from a person in a village, and I was there, and I saw a man cutting down a huge nesting tree which was sheltering 9 nests, and all the baby birds fell down, and a few birds were alive and a few birds died. And when I was there and I saw the baby birds who died and a few birds were suffocating, I got deeply pained and shocked. And then I started arguing with the person. Dada means elder brother. Dada, why you have done so? This bird is in the breeding season, and this bird is so important. And then this person was so angry on me, and soon his neighbors, they joined and they surrounded me, started mocking me, whistling at me, clapping at me, and one of them told that this bird is a bad omen, bad luck, and it doesn't need to live. And who am I, means who are you to lecture on us to save this bird, something like this. So I think from that day my mission started. I realized that PhD research would not be enough. What I'm going to do with my PhD if I couldn't save those trees, save these birds? So that day I realized that so this bird should be a part of our tradition and culture, and there is a huge lack of awareness. In Assam, we practice coexistence with nature from the ancient time, but with some species, I think we have that taboo, we have that perception, and that perception, I think that is also in our society also with our human beings, some perceptions. And I got a call that this is my mission to save these birds, and at that time there were only a few birds there, few nests there, and from that day my mission started. And every time I started visiting, people scolded me. Because this Hargila means they refer to them that they go to garbage dump, they feed on carcasses. So yeah, lots of perceptions were there. And as sir asks, how did I break the stereotype? So I think the perception itself motivated me, ignited me. I think my motherhood ignited me to work on these birds and to break the stereotype. And then I started working with bringing all the women from a small group of women. We started maybe if you have you can show our Hargila army. So yeah, from a group of women, now we have over 20,000 women in the villages who have placed to be Hargila army, from homemakers to be conservationists. And it is not, and Hargila army is so big now, it is not under my control also. Yeah, I always tell everyone have their own chapters. Like I can't believe how it happened. It is so infectious from a small group of women. And I have I think you will get lots of answers when I'll ask a question to you. Have you ever visited the goat bharai? I think goat bharai. Have you ever visited the baby shower or goat bharai of a bird or an animal? You must come Assam and to be a part of our baby shower, the goat bharai, Panchamrit ceremony. We started with this. My question is that when Hargila bird is becoming a mother, these trees are cut down. They are labeled as bad omen. But when in human beings it is so different. We celebrate our motherhood. So from baby shower this started. Goat bharai, Panchamrit ceremony, we started inviting our women. We also invited our women to participate in traditional food competition, food festivals. So at first our women didn't love to come to the meetings, but once we did all this, like baby shower, the traditional food competitions, our women started coming like anything. And we have a pledge in Hargila army that we have to save the biodiversity in our backyard, the tree, the pond, the paddy field, the birds in our backyard. And if we save nature in our backyard, nature will save you, nature will save us. I think this becomes becomes so relevant to all our women, because we tell them that you don't need to go to a Kaziranga National Park, you don't need to come to Delhi to save the bird. You have to come to your backyard. You have to start from your own home, and everyone wants to join. And many people ask that men are also like, why men are not there? But men are also part of our Hargila army. Like every woman, they place that when she becomes a Hargila army, so she has to bring her family, her husband, her children. So this way it becomes like a family movement in Assam. And I also want to share something. Some men called me, Baido means sister, elder sister. So my wife is in your Hargila army. I tell that yes, she is. Oh yes, thank God. So something like this means it's like a brand for them. Everyone they love to be a part of Hargila army. And if you see back, when we have a conservation meeting, we see all the men all the time. Women's participation is so less, but here it is so different. Everyone is there, and when a bird fall, then the man saw it, and then where is the Hargila army? So all the time when some tourists visit to our place, then those tourists meet a man, for example, in a shop. Oh, you have to meet the Hargila army, they will tell you. So it becomes so dead, and all the men, I'm so grateful to them. I think so. And sometimes now this movement is not only about the birds. That is why I always tell that when we are saving a species, it is saving a complex ecosystem, many other birds. And beyond that, for example, out of nowhere a design came out, and our women sell these products all over the world. Out of nowhere a textile or an art song. Yes, our women, we practice, we have our folk songs ingrained with Hargila birds. We have our Assamese traditional prayers. You know about Nam Kirtan, right? Nam Kirtan. So Nam Kirtan is like, we have our Nam Kirtan with Hargila birds. So I request all of you, and now I'll say the number of the birds, how it increased from. It is because of all our community movement, Hargila army. I am just a part of them, tiny part of them. And from 400 birds in Assam, now we have over 1800 birds. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much. And IUCN has downlisted the bird. It was endangered, now it is near threatened. So but we have to work a lot, because the global population is around 3,200 birds, and we are also invited to work on Cambodia, because this bird is found in Assam, Bihar and Cambodia. And they have we just went there in Cambodia and worked with the women and forest rangers and all. And so it's like I'm just the ordinary woman, and I didn't have anything when I started, but now people all over the world, they recognize our work, they meet our Hargila army, and then I am able to work in Cambodia also a little bit though. And so I think Hargila has that much power, and I request all of you, each of you to adopt a species in your mind, in your heart. Our Hargila army story tells that we are conservationists. It doesn't matter what we have studied. It is not that we have to study environmental ecology or zoology or botany. So no matter, we all are conservationists from our heart. We just need to realize that and do our effort. And at last, I always have a question to everyone. Can a piece of cloth can save a bird from extinction? Can a motif can save a species from extinction? So can the women bring a change to a species? Can they save a species from extinction? Yes, my answer is yes. Our Hargila army have proved that, and I invite all of you, taking this as an opportunity, to come to Assam, meet our Hargila army, and fall in love with the Hargila birds and every species in the world. Thank you so much.
Well, Purnima, thank you. That was a real showstopper. And I know we are out of time. We don't have time for a second round. We don't have time for Q&A. But I think if the chair and the director, between the two of them, permit, let's have two questions from the floor. Yes, because this is really quite, and I hope that you will be able to invite Dr. Burman back to the ISC to do a solo presentation.
Certainly we'd like to do
with,
that.
with her Hargila.
We'll do that.
Not 20,000 Hargila army, but maybe two.
Sir, my question, sir. My question. Sir, I'm Arun Kumar Das, journalist. So what is the way forward? The things are mentioned here. It is really bad. Like Madam Patricia said, we are still suffering. We are in the 21st century, but this is happening. So what is the way forward?
Okay, let's take the other question. Anybody else? There will be one other question. Hi, yeah, please.
I think most of the speakers talked about the equality, emancipation of women. We talk of, we can see the society and the politics, how it's working towards the emancipation. What I find, and what I would like to know from you also, what do you think about the governments doling out money when the elections come, whether it is whether it's UP or Maharashtra or Ladki Behan and all those things, they go on doling the money to women to get their votes. What are your views, number one? And just one more thing I wanted to ask you. That we have just seen in the last week how women were discriminated in Afghan embassy. Afghan embassy, even Muttaki addressed a press conference. And only after Halabalwan about the, talking about criticism, that next day on Sunday, they allowed women to come there. Indian government was keeping absolutely quiet about it, you say. What do you think about it? Thank you.
What's the way forward? We have to keep trying. While there's life, there's hope. We can't give up. We continue the good fight, and we hope that mindsets will change, because other than that, and then it's also important for us to spend more time in the rural areas. Even as media persons, many of us are, concentrating on politics and all that, all the gossip around politics. Very few actually care to go and give voice, because voice is agency. If women don't speak up, they're losing that agency. It's a very important agency, and I think it's important to give voice to the weakest, the most powerless. Let them speak up. If we don't change that mode of journalism, we will not be able to bring any change. Government doling out money to the poor, I think it's, money during, just before elections, that's a bribe, right? And I don't know why we are not saying anything. But in this country, we have become so poor that we will welcome anything. I don't know whether that's a one-time dole or will it be given every month. We know what's happening in Maharashtra. Now they're not able to sustain it. So if we don't raise our voices, if the educated, empowered don't speak up, then what happens?
I think one of the things is, the second question will go to Rakhee. One of the things I did want to say is that I think we talked about, I think Purnima talked about mobilization. I think all of us have to do things together. One of the things that I've started, Patricia and I and a friend have started in Shillong, is a simple thing, Shillong talks. You see, a place like IIC you take for granted. Log aayenge, baat karenge, we'll listen to them, we'll ask them questions, we'll go back, either better learned or unlearned or whatever it is. But in a place like Shillong, there's nothing like that. So when back 3 years ago, I said, okay, this is something we need to do. Now we have a core group of 20, 25 people, basically professionals, educators and others, and now we're looking at this education policy which is coming out. So, and these are people the government would listen to, So you need to do things like that in order to be involved. It's not just what you've heard over here. I think that's one thing. We mobilize and work. Rakhee.
Thank you, but I'm very quickly tempted to also pitch in for the first question, just one point, and that is, what is the way forward? We are walking that way, especially because I think from the presentations that we had today, we've not only looked backward, or we've not delved back into the past, but we're actually also charting these very important points of inflection along the way. And we're actually taking stock of each of this. And I have one formula, or rather, it's an ideology or a principle that I seem to have understood over the years, which is if you move away from your own self, educating yourself, emancipating yourself, to larger questions of the community, to the environment, to the ecology, to the planet. I mean, look at her. I think we are walking that walk, right? So that journey is on, and I wouldn't want to regress and say, no, there is no equality. But it's not just about equality. It is about so much more. It's about compassion, it's about empathy. All of these will actually be required to finally understand what is equality or equity, or how do we share our resources, etc. The second question, again, very briefly, this is a culture of appeasement, which is not going to work in the long term. As a university educator myself, I have witnessed hundreds of thousands of students over the last 3-4 years, particularly in Assam, where students are given scholarships not based on merit or not based on economic status. It is a blanket kind of scholarship. If you enroll in the college, you are given 1,250 for your undergrad, 2,500 for a postgrad student. And I am appalled. Initially, I mean, what are we doing? Students, people don't get paid. Government, some people don't even get paid. And here, all you are doing is you are trying to appease the young generation, and you are making sure that that is a constituency which is under your grip. So, and this has, there are two snowballing effects. One is children don't necessarily study because they know that they will get the money and their parents will allow them to be in colleges or in universities because they will take home that money, which makes education free. But are we really working hard for that education? One, because at the second level or the secondary stage, you will get this scheme, that scheme, hundreds of schemes which are not in any way helping us work on working. We are not reviving, or we are not cultivating the culture of work there. So there is an ease and there is a comfort and a slackness about how the young generation will march forward. So I think there is the danger, and I find that very scary, that we have so much being doled out that you don't necessarily support a culture of hard work, struggle, and therefore climbing up the ladder to whatever success.
Stuti, do you want to add something?
Sanjoy.
Can you make it short? Because I also want to make a few remarks and close.
No, I am not here to take up anybody's time, but I was in Manipur a few years ago, and we were as part of a women's press group, and we were taken to see the Mira Pabi's night market, and we were like so amazed to see that women power in action. But then very shortly afterwards, we have seen those images of those women being brutalized, and we have actually heard oral testimonies of a Kukizo who was saying that, you know, she was the other communities was women were actually exhorting them to be raped. Okay, so it's a very frightening and a very demoralizing thing to have faced. My question is a serious question. We have all been very traumatized with what we have seen. What is this solution to this conflict between the Kokizos and the Metais?
I think that, frankly, that requires a completely different session. It requires a different group of people who are conversant with the issue. We all, the two of us have positions, and it's not good to exacerbate the situation now. So you need representation from Manipur to discuss this, and the ISC will have to decide when to do this. I want to close the evening, if I may, Chair. Oh, Gillian, yes, hello.
Yeah, one very short question to Dr. Purnima. I was very lucky to go to Assam on several occasions and to see huge nesting trees with your bird and I think the lesser adjutant also. And a lot of these huge trees, because they need huge trees, were quite near the road. And a lot of these birds with a huge, tiny population are also in Kaziranga National Park. Recently, there was a news story, I hope it's not true, that the 4-lane highway is being put around Kaziranga. Is there any way your army can stop it?
Yes, thank you so much. Your name is Julia, right? Yeah, thank you so much, Julia, madam. So yes, yeah, we are trying our best to do this, and we are saving now the nesting colonies. And you were mentioning about the lesser adjutant stork. Yes, yeah. Sanjoy also asked me how people can distinguish between the hargila and the other birds. So we are saving the greater adjutant storks, and at the same time, when we are saving greater adjutant storks, people from many villages, so yeah, it's like happening together. Like they call us and we go, and then lesser adjutant storks are also being saved, and lesser adjutant storks nest both in villages and also on the highways. And but greater adjutant storks very rarely, and they just go to the villages. They select the tall trees and they nest there. But lesser adjutant storks, they are quite adaptive. They can build nests on the highway and also on the villages. So yeah, so and sometimes they also share the same niche, same territory, like together in some villages. Yeah, so we are trying our best now. We are I wanted to mention this also. So our work is a behavioral change model, and yes, we want to replicate this to many other species of storks and many other species of endangered species, and we are trying our best, and we write to government so that it doesn't happen in the highways. And there are some people from some organizations who are very dedicated organization, and they also stopped some trees of lesser adjutant storks in Nagaon. So they stopped from not cutting down, so they help them. And we all are working together, and yes, hopefully we will do this kind of efforts more near future. Thank you so much for your question. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll have to close. I just wanted to just say one thing before I close. Many years ago, about 20 odd years ago, I came across a case of a young woman dying in childbirth on a ferry, on a boat in Assam. I won't go into the details, but that spurred me to do two things. One was to research the issue, maternal mortality ratio in Assam, which was at that time 493 out of 1 lakh live births, 1993, 94. Today it is 100, just under 100. 125, it is actually less. And one of the things that I thought about was, why is this happening? I was a journalist, I still am a writer and journalist, and I was traveling on the ferry on which this young woman had died on the way in because she couldn't get to a hospital in time. The thing was access. And then I discovered that in Assam there are 2,500 islands on the Brahmaputra. 2,500 islands on which 2.5 million people live. That is 1/8 of the 1/12 of the population of Assam lives on islands. So you can imagine the condition of health, of education, and so on. And so we were thinking about what can be done. I'm a hack. I'm not my brother's a doctor, my father, grandfather, everybody are doctors. Then you had this eureka moment. You said, okay, people can't come for the health service should go to them. The only way you can go to them is by boat. So we designed a boat that takes healthcare to people on islands. Today, we started with one boat. Today, there are 15 boats. We reach 2.5 lakh people with healthcare. And one of the reasons why Assam's maternal mortality has come down is because, I think, of this intervention. Not because the government also has done a huge amount of work, but these groups, these communities of people on the boats, the boat clinic teams are really reaching the unreached. So I just wanted to share that with you, that the gaps are as large as we want them to be. You know, they can be closed, and it doesn't need rocket science. Ma'am, if you don't mind, I would like to close now. And thank you all very much for your.
Just before you close, may I just use my prerogative as the chair to come in and say that I've learned a lot by listening to the group here today. And I think I want to share that what one hears is, as you very rightly pointed out, that we're walking along the path. It makes me feel that also what some of us tried to do in earlier years was not in vain, that many of the models that we tried to put across did succeed, are succeeding. The collectives of women, which you highlighted, is a key issue. And I'd like to bring out that it is the self-help groups which are now in the lakhs across the country that are powering that part of our economy that really reaches out to the lowest levels, not to the Adanis and the Ambanis, which get boosted up by other policies. And so the first point that comes through is we are on the right path, but we need to scale up enormously. That's one issue that we have failed on. From Patricia's presentation, I realized that we haven't done enough in terms of tackling the problems of reproductive health. And also what Sanjoy says. I mean, my own life revolved around fighting that battle. But I find that while there are, of course, huge pockets in the country where there are differences. We've reached that level at the national level where we're talking about replacement level fertility. But as Patricia says, Meghalaya is still with 5 to 6 children in many places, and there are other parts of darkness around the country where we haven't been able to reach. But alongside with that, what disturbed me very much was Patricia's talking about the huge number of teenage pregnancies that are occurring. And I think that's, again, a kind of strange twist that has come to women's sexuality, in which the media, unfortunately, has played a very, very strong role, because sexuality sells, and they are more concerned with the money that they bring in than the values that they can put across. And so that's another area that we need to work on still, and now to refocus reproductive health in different ways. But what really gave me strength was with historical remembrance of women of courage, less known in our parts than they are in yours, but that they have been everywhere. The Rani of Jhansi's, that famous Rani of Jhansi, there are millions of them in this country that we haven't heard about or known and should. And the modern Ranis, Jhansis, that are there, as the Hargilla story tells, when you can turn an army that was militant to coexistence and create an army in order to conserve and build rather than. And so I would say that the final thing, in fact, way back in the 90s, I did a series of television programs which then came on to the national television looking at social issues. And I ended that program series, and I mind you, this is 1994, with a man called Anna Hazare. He finally started the Ram Leela, but in 1994, he was not the Ram Leela man. He was just a simple truck driver who had gone back into his village and saw the drought in that Marathwada region and built small earth check dams around the village, which we photographed and showed. And I remember ending that series with saying, if we had more Anna Hazares in this country, things could transform very quickly. There are Anna Hazares again. We have them in Purnima. We just wish, just as I said before, more Anna Hazares, more Purnima Devis. That's what we need. So I thank you for having given me the privilege of chairing this session and of learning from you today of where we need to go. Thank you.
Thank you all. And I think we'll need more Purnima Devis than Anna Hazares. And Mr. Director, one thing I did want to say. Everybody, this book landed in my hands yesterday after many years of writing. It's a book on the Brahmaputra. So I'm going to do a plug for it. It's on Amazon. Get it if you can. It's called River Traveler.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I honor all the panelists on behalf of IIC, I would like to say a few words. I would say that the presentation made by all the panelists, Rakhee, Stuti, Patricia, and Purnima, very, very impressive, very impressive. And we would definitely like to see them more at IIC. Let me also inform you that we have signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Northeastern Affairs. Under that MOU, all the expenses, travel expenses, professional expenses, are going to be paid by that ministry, and we provide a local hospitality. So already a very enabling environment we have created here to get more and more artists, academicians from Northeast to come and participate in our programs and also deliver their talks and other performances. The panelists really brought out very many things which are not really known to us. Stuti mentioned about several unsung heroes, women heroes who have contributed so much, not only to freedom movement, but also to the cause of education for women and others. Patricia's presentation really surprised me, because all the while we had the impression that Meghalaya is a matrilineal society, and therefore the numero uno position is held by the women. But what she really brought, the real situation, really is surprising, and I'm sure a lot of his work is required to be done to really raise their status. To Purnima, I would only like to say, Purnima, with your passionate appeal for Hargila, actually you have converted this entire audience into Hargila army. So thank you so much, all of you, and let me have the pleasure of honoring all of you on behalf of IIC.
Mr. Srivastav, may I please add that Patricia Mukhim last year won the prestigious Sahas Award, and she was the Shiro of Courage. And I think it's a South Asian award. It's very prestigious. We want to congratulate her once more. And the function was held at the IIC, as you would know. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let me begin with Purnima first. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir.
your book, which I'm going to read line by line.
And the year before that, Rakhee Kalita won the Sahas Prerna Award for her work in education. Thank you.
Sanjoy. I'm getting one. Thank you, Sanjoy. To the chairperson.
Thank you. Sorry, I find it difficult to get up nowadays.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
We all stand together for a photo.
Yeah.